Hello, Ken Spriggs here with part 2 of my 2001 Orion Space Clipper build. A bit of a delay in getting on to part 2. A couple little setbacks on this kit. It's been more of a challenge than I really was looking for right now. I was looking for an easy kit to build, and of course that never happens because I just spent 6 months on my discovery. So I just wanted something simple that I didn't have to put a lot of pain and suffering into. Hasn't been quite that bad, but the main issues I've had is I want the back engine compartment to be able to be removable in order to change the batteries for the lighting, which obviously I should have known. Putting lighting in photo etch would have been a lot more trouble than just building the normal kit. But I finally got it hashed out, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Also a little bit of struggle on working on the photo etch, the cockpit, getting it in place and positioned and everything like that. So, but a lot of good work done. I have in this video I'll seal up the fuselage with the lighting inside for the cockpit and the passenger cabin. And so let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so I'm continuing the progress on the 2001 Space Clipper. One part that's really been vexing me and frustrating me is working out a way to keep the back engine parts separate and to have it connect onto the fuselage so I can have a battery in here for the lights. I want it all to be self-contained. So there's enough room in here for a coin battery, which is no problem. And it's not going to be some sophisticated lighting. I think 2, maybe 3 LEDs at the most. One for the cockpit in the front, and 1 or maybe 2 for the passenger compartment. One on the front, one on the back, to light up that whole area. So I've been playing with a few ideas to get that to stay in there. It's not a great fit, and you only have a tiny little bit of a lip. So I thought about putting in, and I did add on some styrene stripping. Not stripping, I'm sorry. Some styrene sheet that kind of mimic the inside of that fuselage. And it does go in, but I couldn't get it to fit tightly, and it kept pulling away at the top. So I came up with an idea of a magnet. And you can see I have it right there. It's kind of inset a bit, and it's glued into that top piece. And then on the inside I have a magnet glued onto the roof, and it's only really glued on half of it right now because this isn't glued together. So once I get it glued together, I'll glue the rest of it on, and it'll match up there. But even with that, it really wasn't, it still didn't want to go together at the top. It's just a really crappy fit. So I ended up fixing that by gluing a bit of round stock around the edge of this to kind of force it into a little more of a solid position all the way around it. So, all right, let me put that onto there, and I'll show you what that's going to look like when those are together. All right, there you go. And it's also difficult because it doesn't, the back of it is not the same height or the shape of the fuselage. Underneath you have the wings, so the wing section meets up with it at the bottom. So that little bit of styrene there, and it's still just a little bit of a gap. Oh my goodness, like I just don't know why that is. It's really hard to get that in there. So I may have to just do a little more adjusting of that. But it's not a bad fit, and it's on there pretty solid because of the magnet. So that'll keep it in place, and then I can remove it when I want to replace the battery for the lighting. So, and I'm not going to do anything fancy as far as like a remote control or anything, so I'll just probably have the switch right inside here with the battery, so I can take that off, turn it on, and put it back on. So okay, let me go ahead and put this on the wings, and I'll show you what that's going to look like as well. Okay, and then here is it temporarily together. I still don't have the fuselage glued together, but I have it sitting on there, and the back of it is secured in there with the magnet. You can see that white stripping right there as well on the bottom and around the edge of this, the fuselage there, which you won't see. Once I get it painted, it'll all be blended together. So, all right, so that's I'm ready to go ahead and start getting the interior inside the kit and the lighting, and then I'll be ready to seal it up, and then we'll just be able to go ahead and get it painted. Okay. Alright, so as you saw from the last stills, I got the cockpit together and got the seats in there, painted blue. I just kind of picked some colors. I wasn't really going for screen accuracy necessarily, because you're really not going to see it. You're going to just see that there's something in there. I did put some thin styrene over the sides and the top. And the sides, I put some clear Tamiya's on there, some red, excuse me, blue, orange, green, that kind of thing. And the top, I just have a piece of sanded clear styrene to give a white light through the top. And then, as you can see, when I hold it up to the light, you can see the controls glowing through. And you can see the top lights a little bit. I also did that with this little control bank on the front, because I think that's going to show through pretty well. It's going to be pretty obvious from the way that it's positioned inside the kit. All right, so I still have to do some some more light blocking around the edges where I glued it together. But other than that, I'm ready to start test fitting it inside the kit and see how that looks, and then start looking at some lighting schemes. In addition, I did a little bit more modification on the passenger compartment because I test fitted it, and when it sits inside, there's a noticeable gap on both sides of it where the light from the top is going to shine down through the sides, and it's not going to look right. So I just took some square styrene stock and glued it on both sides of it, and now it pretty much just is snug up against both sides of the interior. Maybe just a little bit more sealing around that, but that's ready to go in as well. And I have the seats glued in, so they're ready to go also. And I have the blue in the front to kind of mimic some TV screens. And the same thing, you're going to see that there's something in here. It's going to look a little busy, but you're not going to see a ton of detail through those little windows. So, okay. All right, so let me go ahead and get that masked off, and then we'll start getting it fitted inside the kit. This one I'm going to have to create something a little more solid, maybe put a piece of styrene on the bottom, a lip for it to sit on, that kind of thing. So we'll see. All right. All right, so I used some 5-minute epoxy. There's 2 bottles right there. And I sealed in the big gaps around the edges, like right at the bottom edge there, you can see both sides. Along the top edge too. And right now it's just clear, so you can see there's still a lot of light leaking through there on the bottom there. Once that 5-minute epoxy dries, it'll give me a nice solid base. I'll paint white over it first of all, so it doesn't show black through the inside, and then black over top of that to mask it. So, all right, and I decided to go ahead and use some Milliput which is another epoxy. It's like a clay or a putty, and it comes in two parts, and you just break off the equal amounts, and you just knead them together until they become the same color. This one is gray and yellow, so it's kind of an off yellow when you're done. And it can be molded, and it's very solid, so I can mold it inside the kit and then use it to hold the part in there. I started to fit it in there. As you can see, a little bit is still on there, and that'll be the best way to go because of the uneven surfaces inside of the fuselage. I'll be able to put it in there and press it down and get that in there where I need it to be. What I also did, it's kind of hard to see, but the that rounded part there in the front of that lip was a little too far back for when I put the little photo etch windscreen on it. So I just used an X-Acto knife and carved that out a little bit and sanded it. And I'll end up painting that before I'm done, probably white. So when I glue on the photo etch piece, get that for you. It's very tiny. Drop it, but okay, there you go. I bent it a little bit and curved it, and plus I'll put some clear plastic behind it, but that's gonna get glued onto there to give it a little more realistic look than the part that comes with the kit, which is just a solid hunk of plastic. So that's kind of the design. I even tried a little bit maybe to put that over top of this, but this is just too thick and it distorts the vision behind, as you can see. So I want you to be able to see inside the cockpit and see the interior somewhat with the little seats, and there'll be some lights on them as I showed. There you go. So you'll have some lights on the sides, lights there in the controls. There'll be a light on the top. Okay. Alright, I started playing with an LED a little bit on the inside to figure out the right positioning to light up this, and I kind of figured out I just really need two LEDs, one in the front, right on the top, I'm sorry, right on the back, right on the top, and then the front, right on the top. So that way it lights up these rows on the top and also these little screens here. So you get a nice even lighting inside the cockpit. So, and rather than using the tiny LEDs that I have a couple of regular LEDs, just these I had lying around. So I'll just use two of those. I might end up using the same thing for the cockpit, where I might have to go with some smaller LEDs. I have several things to light up, as I just showed. And once I get it in there, it's going to be a bit tricky. I can put a light on top of it, which will get this, and possibly the sides, we'll see. But I still have that bottom to put a light into, so. Alright, so let me go ahead and keep working on that, and then get ready to start putting this in. And this is just a test. This is already starting to get kind of rigid and stiff. It's supposed to become rock hard in about 2 to 3 hours. So I'm just testing some of this. I'll go ahead and make up a new batch once I get this all ready to go. All right. So I have most of the lights wired onto the cockpit. I have two small LEDs on either side for the side wall lights. As you can see, sorry, it's so shaky. And I have one LED under the front for the control panel. You can see right there. Alright, then I need one more light on the top for that top main light for the cockpit. I'll probably have that glued onto the inside of the kit. And I need to trim these wires down quite a bit. and probably wire them into one single wire, which I can combine with the two for the passenger section. Okay, let me go ahead and keep working on that. Alright, so I went ahead and got the cockpit inside of the kit. It looks kind of rough, I understand, but you're not going to see any of that other part. So that milliput is really good stuff for this kind of purpose. It gave me a lot of working time that I could move it around and position it just where I wanted it to be. I could also use it to squeeze in for some light blocking in certain parts around it, because this is kind of a rough fit inside of this kit. So I also put the two pieces together while I was doing it, so I knew that it was lined up right. I have all of the lights on it, including the one on top there, you can see, and all wired into two leads. What I'm going to do is attach just a single wire to these two and run it back, and they'll all come together with the two from the cockpit, or from the passenger compartment. So, all right, so let me go ahead and put a battery on that, and I'll show you what that's going to look like. Okay, so you can see that lights up all around it. You can see inside the cockpit, you have the side lights and you have the control panel lights. Okay, we put the two halves together, and I'll show you how that looks with it together as well. Here you go. So I don't have the windscreen on there obviously just yet. That'll have to be put on after it's all glued together. Sorry, it's flickering. I'm just kind of dangling some wires here. But you'll be able to see inside the cockpit there a little bit. Little lights on the side. And a control panel. Alright, so let me get that finalized and then get the start working on the passenger compartment, and I'll be ready to get this fuselage sealed together. Alright, so I have a small LED hot glued to the top of the back above the passenger cabin, and I have a bigger one up here in the front glued in to light up those blue screens, and also for the light across the top to light up the windows and the lights at the top of the cabin. Alright, and I'm going to run the wiring down through that channel at the bottom and through the back and trim this one down here, and then wire them all together into a coin battery holder and a switch. So let me go ahead and get that done. I'm ready to glue the cabin in now. Once I get that in there, I'll show you how those lights are going to look. Okay, one other thing I wanted to mention, I don't use these kind of LEDs very much. The big ones, I usually use the little SMDs. But I did a little trick that I learned on YouTube from another modeler, Buck Moore. He does a really great job. I love watching his videos. Lots of good tips and tricks that I've gotten from him. One of them is to take some sandpaper or an emery board and just scuff it up, sand it down so it dulls it, and then it makes the light brighter because it diffuses it a lot more. So that was a great idea. So thanks for that, Buck. That's really going to help for this situation. And so let me go ahead and get those all put in, get the cabin put in, and then we'll see how that's going to look. All right, so I finally got it all wired together. The passenger compartment in there. Have it all attached. I decided to go with two AAA batteries and a holder. That'll fit in there. Coin batteries are nice for their size, but they just don't have any lasting power at all. So these certainly do, and plus they're much brighter, as you can see. So you can kind of see the idea of that little passenger compartment there with the lights and the two little TV screens. Got the cockpit lit up. Alright, so I'm ready to go ahead and get this thing sealed up finally, this fuselage. Let me just get that switch right there glued onto the side so it'll be in there positioned, and then I'm ready to seal the thing up. Alright, so finally got the fuselage glued together. It was also a little bit of a bear to get that to go together. One heck of a seam I got to clean up. No big deal. That has a piece that goes over top of that little slot. Same with right there in the front. Those little bit of light leaks won't be a problem once I get it sanded down and cleaned up. Then I'll get paint over top of it. So I just kind of put everything together. The fuselage is glued together, but the rest of it is not. The back is held on with the magnet, as I showed earlier. The bottom I just stuck on for right now, just to kind of see how it looks. Okay, there's the cockpit. And it gets kind of washed out in the camera as usual. There is the passenger cabin. See the lights in there. Little seats. Little blue TV screen in the front. A couple of them. All right. So coming along very well. Very glad to get that closed up. Now all I have to do is seal off those windows. That's why I painted over top of them, so I could already have it painted, and I'll just mask over just that section of windows because there's a clear plastic window in there. I still have to put the cockpit front windscreen on, and then get that painted, get that masked off as well, so I can start painting the rest of it. And there's the other side. All right, so I'm going to get and wrap up this video for this week. A lot of progress. Got the lighting completed, and got the fuselage sealed up finally. All right. So I'll now be working on getting that seam fixed and painting, and then we're getting close to finishing this up. All right. Thanks again to all my subscribers, and I will see you here soon.